officers here at Education Scotland. I've been in the team about 7 years, but before that I was an early years officer, or nursery nurse before that, in West Lothian for a number of years. So when I was there, in quite a big standalone setting, one of my leadership roles, no surprise, would be in digital technology. So it's something that I'm really interested in, and it's something that I like to spend time researching in, but also getting out into settings, when I can, or whoever will have me. I've been doing a wee bit of volunteering in my little boy's nursery. He's now at preschool nursery. And I've really enjoyed it, and very quickly I've been reminded of the reality of working, with this age group. A few different little sort of experiences I've had set up for me just to observe, to see how children engage with things, haven't really gone to plan because I forgot about the transported schema. So every time I was going to find something or look for something, it was away down the other end of the nursery. So we've got lots of suggestions and ideas coming up throughout the next few sessions as well. But it's not a one-size-fits-all approach, okay? All these settings are very different. Your children's interests and needs are very different. And I suppose what I'm really trying to say is there's no right way to do it. It's whatever works for your children. So the first session today, we're going to have a wee look at the first part of the Digital Schools Award framework. This is like our sort of starting point, where we think about, what exactly do we want to get out of digital technology? What sort of spaces do we hope to create? And what do we want? What experiences do we want for the children? And a way that we can do that is by coming together and creating a digital strategy or a policy, where you're formalising your ideas, you're putting it down on paper, and you're bringing everyone together. So your team members, your other stakeholders, your parents, as well as the children too. So for those of you that are like brand new to the Digital Schools Award, it's been on the go now for a few years, but only last year was the very first year of the Digital Learning Through Play Award, specifically for ELC settings. So when you get a chance to have a wee look through the framework, you'll see that it's worded quite similarly to realising the ambition, and that was, obviously done deliberately and would make sense. So it's very much about open-ended play experiences and very much about your sort of everyday, bigger picture engagements with technology. So we're not thinking about, you might think of, or you've heard of, a really great example of the wee ones using technology might be their programming robots. Yeah, that has its place. That can be really interesting and really fun too, and there's lots of good learning involved in that. But we're thinking about the sustainable, everyday things that go on, and that can keep going on, even if maybe you have a more confident member of staff that leads it. These experiences can keep going on once they leave. So the bigger picture stuff. And in this photograph here, we've got a wee boy here on an outdoor walk. And if you have a wee look at the little images all round about him, these are all the different types of engagements with technology that we might have to make that walk possible. So we might check the weather. We probably will, won't we? We risk assess everything, so let's make sure there's no weather warnings. We might look on the Maps app to plan our route and to see where there's roads that we need to cross. You might track your journey. That's what the two images over on the right are there, the orange one and the floor book one. One setting tracked their journey. They had their phone, their nursery phone that they had for the risk assessment, if they had to call back for an emergency or anything like that, and they used the map app on that tracked their journey. They were then able to print a wee screenshot of it when they got back to the nursery so the children could revisit their learning. They might have a compass, which is a piece of technology as well, or it might be the digital version. It might be on the phone, or they might have a nursery device out with them. So that just really gives you a flavour of the whole award. So, it's not all about, coding, computing science, or, making great use of screen-based technology, but it's all the wee things that we do every day on a daily basis. Something that's really important about the award too is it recognises when you might choose not to use digital technology. So we're not saying that it's a digital first approach, but more about it's a considered approach to technology, because you'll know your children best, and you know what some children might respond to really well, others might find it's overstimulating, and there might be points in the day or areas of the nursery that you might not want things that make a noise, or things that light up, and that will be different for every setting. So that's really important, that it's not a one size fits all. So the award has these 5 strands here. So the one that we're going to look at today is leadership and vision, and then in our next session we'll look at technologies within the curriculum. In the session after that, we'll look at our setting culture. And then in the final session, we'll combine the professional learning and the resources and infrastructure together into one final 4th session. Now, not today, but in the follow-up sessions, I will be sharing with you examples of evidence that other nursery settings have gathered, just again to give you a wee bit of a feel for, the types of interactions and the types of resources that were being used. So these are the pieces of evidence that they shared to Digital Schools Award validators. Today, I'm not going to do that today because there's quite a lot in today, but what I'm going to do today is leave you with 2 video link recordings. They're optional if you've got a chance. One is just sort of setting the scene. It's an intro session to the award. That one's really important because one of the validators come on and talk you through the award process. Some of you have maybe joined it already, you've maybe caught up already, but if not, that's there for you. And then the second recording gives you a bit of practitioner insight. So it's a lovely practitioner from, I'm going to probably say the wrong place, Perth and Kinross, that kind of area, might not be that. It'll tell you on the slide note anyway, and she's given practitioner insight about why they decided to go for this award and what happened during the process of the validation call as well, and it's really, really super helpful. Okay, so I'm just going to check some questions here. All right.
Nothing so far.
I think we're okay. Good stuff. All right, so leadership. So I won't read this out, I'll let you have a wee look. So as well as having your policy to sort of get, your plan down on paper and get everyone involved, another thing that the Digital Schools Award validators will look for is that there's evidence on your setting improvement plan that you are, working towards improving children's experiences with digital technology. If you're planning to apply for the award, that this really is your starting point, and this is what we're going to look at today. So we've got sort of 2 practical demos, almost demos if you like, of creating your policy and what it might look like to have digital technology in your improvement plan. And the beauty is it's not an extra thing, it's not an add-on, we're not adding anything else on, but we're going to intertwine digital technology in your existing improvement plans, or show you how you can do that. Where we use technology almost as the driver to meet those actions rather than adding it on as another thing to do, because we all know how busy it is in ELC at the moment. So why would you want to go for this? Okay, well, children's experiences, isn't it? That's why we do everything that we do in ELC. We're giving children the best start in life, and we're trying to give them, the richest of learning opportunities. But the other thing that it can do for us is it can bring you together as a staff team. You'll have more confident members of staff staff in your team, and then you'll have more members that maybe need a wee bit more support. But our strategy is a really good way for you to all work together towards the same goal. It's almost giving you a roadmap. And it doesn't have to be complex. We go for straightforward, if we can get it on a 1-pager, then that is absolutely in what we want to do, because we want to keep things simple and succinct and understood by everybody. And we want to keep it realistic and manageable too, small steps. Okay, so think about that sustainable approach that everybody is able to manage. just going to show a video now, or a part of a video. I bet I've not shared with sound, just let me sort that. I'll do it every single time. Okay, here we go. And this is a staff team chatting about the benefits of having a strategy for digital technology. Now, bear in mind, this is quite an old one, okay? This is from about 2018, and it was using the old Digital Skills Award framework, not the new one that we'll have a wee look at shortly, but just to give you a wee feel for, what it helped them to do. Speed it up a wee bit. Right, it's not going to let me do that, of course, so I'll just watch it from the start.
Creating a digital strategy for our nursery has made a significant impact in staff confidence in digital learning. Some staff were previously really quite nervous around digital technology, and the strategy has helped to change their mindsets.
When the centre first opened in 2006, we had very little knowledge or experience of using any kind of digital technology. We struggled with basic word processing, and email was alien to us. Although we were apprehensive, we could see the benefits and knew that having these skills could make our working life so much easier. In particular with communication, because working split shifts in a big centre could sometimes be problematic. We initially attended CPD sessions in the local community to provide us with specific support, and then over the years we have gradually developed in confidence with all in the in-house CPD opportunities that are on offer, and from the continual support of the more confident staff.
Digital learning became the responsibility of all, no matter what stage of the digital journey you were.
Just going to stop that one there. The full recording is there if you want to catch up on it later on. So this was quite a long journey for some members of staff, as you heard them say there. They didn't have experience in email. The centre opened in about 2006, and this would be about 2018. So I think they went for the award around about 2016. But it was a slow but a continual process. And what you could hear them talking about there was getting it down on paper. And then, it then became the responsibility of everybody, although, there would be some members of staff leading and supporting a wee bit more, but, it was for everyone to become involved. And because if you want to provide these opportunities for the children, you need to be confident, in dabbling with digital technology yourself as well. So, starting your strategy or policy, where will you start? Is there anything out there already that you kind of resonate with? You might already have a sort of draft. You might be sort of working off, if you're maybe a chain of nurseries, you might already be working off a sort of overall one. You might be leaning more towards the local authority strategy, or you might have more of a feel for what's in some of the national guidance. So we're going to have a wee look at that just now, and I'll look at a couple of different pedagogical approaches as well. So first up, we've got realising the ambition. And all I've done here is I've opened it as a PDF and I've done a search for the keyword digital. Okay, so that brings up all the sections where digital technology is mentioned. And you'll maybe have heard me before if you've been at other sessions. There's sort of two parts to this in realising the ambition. And the first part is looking at digital technology and how it helps children learn, and that's split into two strands. So there's the learning with and the learning through. And the example that gives on that page is about learning with a torch. So the learning with part is, the on off, the cause and effect. I press a button, a light comes out the torch. That's what a torch does. But then the learning through is about all the opportunities that then open up because of that torch. Okay, so you can see in the dark, you might start to explore shadows, you might be exploring transparency, you might be shining it through a leaf, and then what can you see that you couldn't see, before, and so on. And the other element that it talks about is bringing virtual experiences into your playroom as well. So, think about when the children ask, a question about a topic, and you don't have a book to hand, you might not have a great deal of knowledge on it, but you know that if you do a search, you might be able to find that answer. And I think the example it gives you in realising the ambition as children had me learning about sharks. And they find some pictures of the scale size, of a human next to a shark, or it might be that you're looking for some media of like the ocean waves or the sharks swimming under the sea. And it's all these things that we couldn't do without technology. And then this one is from the Scottish Government Play Strategy that was just published earlier this year, the 2025 one. And again, I've done the same sort of search here, but this one's sectioned online play, not digital play. And in here it highlights, all the benefits, such as, problem solving, social interaction, a sense of achievement and things like that. You'll be able to read it yourself, but it also highlights, and this is really important, the importance of cyber resilience and internet safety. So it's about, making sure that these experiences that we're providing or inviting children to explore are done safely and securely. You may be more of a Froebelian-based setting. And if you have a wee look at, there's a couple of different research highlight papers that look at digital technology. So one is mostly about documenting learning, and I've linked these all in the slide notes. And then this one is about supporting language when we're using digital technology, and it talks about this term joint media engagement. And that's about making sure that there's an adult or an older person, an older child, an older sibling there if a child is having screen time, just to make sure, that it doesn't become a solitary, passive experience, because it's that all important, that language development that we know comes, best from human interaction. You might be more interested in the Reggio Emilia pedagogy. You might be thinking more about the environment. As the third teacher, you might be thinking about documentation and the learning walls. You might be thinking about technology as one of the languages for children to be able to express their feelings. So that might be, something that kind of encapsulates what you want your strategy to say. Just before we go to that, we're just going to have a wee think about your existing improvement plans, because we want everything to tie up. There's a lot of bits and pieces out there, isn't there, in ELC? There's a lot of policy, there's a lot of paperwork and a lot of things that we need to do. So if we can make things join up, that's going to make it a wee bit easier for ourselves, and it's going to make sense. So, your existing improvement plan priorities. So you're setting improvement plan priorities. You might know what they are to hand, you might not. You might need to go back and have a wee look. But what I've got here is just a sort of demo or a mock sort of list of improvement plan priorities. I've not put them in any sort of table or anything like that, because each local authority, and lots of settings in fact within those local authorities, display them all very differently. So I've just listed them like this. So let's say we've got these three priority areas are health and wellbeing, numeracy and maths, and literacy and English. And this year we're going to be seeking out digital technology and resources that are going to help us to meet these aims. So Our aim for literacy in English might be to encourage and capture voice and feedback, okay? Our aim for numeracy and maths might be to develop number and measurement and estimation. A goal or an aim for health and wellbeing might be to look more at developing our spaces to create sort of restful relaxation spaces. Okay, so where would digital technology fit? How could digital technology come in there without adding, to our workload? But how could we use technology to be that driver to help us to achieve these things? Okay, so again, just an example. Yours might look completely different. So we might introduce talking buttons. So it might be the little talking postcards or buttons, or it might be like a voice memo app if we have a device. And it might be used at times like, well, I say snack menu planning. I clearly wrote this before the new guidance came in. So you might not be doing that, because there might not be a lot to talk about there, but it could be planning learning. It could be, when you're doing your topics, when you're evaluating, revisiting learning. It could be, I don't know if you have maybe a try at home table or a try at home station, learning at home station out in the cloakroom where families can pick up ideas of things to try at home. You'll know best where this could work well. But the aim is to introduce the technology that encourages children to talk, to record their voice. And it could even be in the story corner, it could be retelling stories as well. But what we want to try and do is capture voice, encourage children, to talk and gather feedback across all our spaces. And then how would we know? How would we measure this? Well, we have our audits, don't we, and our observations. But the progress over time would show that listening and talking and creating texts would be sort of more frequent. And I've brought in there creating text because remember that creating a text doesn't have to be on paper, okay? It can be any form of media as well. Right, if we were thinking about improving number, measurement and estimation across all of our spaces, and we wanted to bring in some technology here, we might bring in digital scales, talking scales. It might be a digital measuring tape, or it might be the Measure app if you've got a device, and it might be things that you can use both outside and indoors. And again, how would we know? Quality audits, quality assurance audits, and our observations and our progress over time we would see in our observations, okay? So number, measurement and estimation. And then for our health and wellbeing one, so we're thinking about relaxing spaces. So the reason to have them, it would be for rest, but of course to help children to regulate emotion as well. So, if we've got a sort of quiet, calm down area, what could we do with the technology to make this more inviting and to make it more sort of ambient? So it might be, just gentle light, changing colour lights. It might be some, very gentle music, or it could be projections. Now, some settings use projectors onto the wall, some settings use the little battery projectors up onto the ceilings, and some settings have interactive panels. Great if they're on wheels and you can move them round. Not so easy to move whole areas to the panel, but much easier to move the panel round. So, that might be a way that you can help to make those spaces. And same again, the quality assurance audits and the observations, where we would hope to see, progress in children being able to regulate their emotions by, coming into those areas to calm down a wee bit or to rest when needed. Now, I mentioned earlier about the different frameworks, so you might still be thinking, oh, I'm just really not sure yet. I need to go back and think about this to think, what do we really want? What do we want our policy to look like? And we'll come to the policy just in a wee second. But somewhere that you can go for support is to the Digital Schools Award, the framework. So there's a Digital Schools Award website, but we also have this downloadable Word document version that you can download, and you can add an extra column on to put your notes in, or you can print it out, you can highlight things, whatever you're most comfortable with. But it's giving you an idea of some of the examples, the evidence, the things that you might be doing. So I'll not go through that all because it's quite hard to see it on the screen, but that is something that you can have a wee look at yourself later on. So another really useful thing to do here is a wee bit of peer moderation as well. Have a wee walk around. If you can get to other settings, great, but I know the reality of that, it's not likely. But use the technology that we've got, so video calls with other settings, or email back and forwards, some photos of your areas, some pictures of the resources that you've got, some pictures of the photos, some photos of your areas, and sort of bounce ideas back and forward. What could we do here? What could we use in this corner? So the screenshot there on the screen, just to explain that's from Realising the Ambition, and that's just about helping us to remember that about looking outwards and collaborating with others. And when I start to share the examples of evidence with you, and also wee snapshots from the reports, that's all part of that as well. So I know that a lot of us, you can't get out now, there's not the same time, there's not the same cover, but reading what goes on in other settings, as well as contacting them, that can all help too. The new quality improvement framework. So I don't know if we're going to call this QuiffELC. I am not sure yet. I've never heard anybody calling it QuiffELC, but I've been saying that in my head. So in terms of the challenge questions that are in there, what I've done is on the slide notes, I've pulled them all out. So I've written down what quality improvement indicator it's from, and I've written down, or I've typed out, an example of what they're saying. So you'll see that cyber resilience and internet safety is really apparent in all the safeguarding section. But within learning, teaching and assessment, within playing, learning and development, there's a few different parts, and then there's quite a big chunk in wellbeing, inclusion and equality. So one of the very good examples talks about universal support and how children are supported with high quality interactions, experiences, creative use of spaces and technology. So it's very open, it's not narrowing down or honing in on any specific parts. It is very open, and that again is because, all settings are different, the resources that we have are different, our children's needs are different, and there's really no one size fits all. One more very good example in the inclusion quality indicator is our staff make use of technology to enable every child to participate fully in an increasingly digital world and support involvement and engagement of families. Okay, so I'll let you have a wee look at that yourself. You can do what I did and do the keyword search for digital, and it'll pull it up, or you can have a wee look at the slide notes. So that's given us quite a wee bit to think about. Okay, so what are our existing improvement priorities? What are we already working towards? Where can digital help us? Where can technology help us to meet those? What's influencing us? What do we really want? How do we want to shape our policy? Are we going to go to some of the national guidance that's already out there, or are we going to lean more towards theory or a type of approach that we really appreciate and value in our settings? So here is the start of my mock policy. Does anybody recognise this? I maybe gave it away earlier on, but this is a quote that I have just lifted clean out of one of the Scottish Government pieces of guidance. Realising the Ambition. So you might want to start off your policy, your one pager, with a vision statement. That might be what you already do. I think, thinking back now, I think that's what we used to do in the setting that I was in. You'd have your title, you'd have your wee paragraph, your aim or your vision statement, and then you would have your actions. then of course it would be detailed in, you know, dates, when do we want to achieve them, who's going to do them, and how will we know that we've achieved that sort of thing. So that's just been lifted completely out of realising the ambition. You can do that as long as you know, put a wee reference in. Or you might want to base your sort of vision statement on something that's there already and just reword it a wee bit. So that was my attempt at rewording the previous statement. You might already have a set way that you do your own policies or strategies, and you might have a sort of wee overarching paragraph that you just tweak to fit whichever area of the curriculum or whichever initiative it is. So once we've got that sort of opening piece, we then need to think about, well, what are our actions? How are we going to get there? How will we know when that's worked? So there's a few things you could do here. You could either break it down into the 5 sections of the Digital Schools Award. That might really help you when you're gathering evidence as well. Or you might already want to mirror it off the Renfrew strategy as well. So you might want to use the objectives in there. Because I'm part of the national organisation, I'm going to use the national strategy to base it off. No surprise there, Pammy. So this is the existing national strategy, the enhancing learning and teaching through the use of digital technology. And I quite like it because it's split into 4. Okay, so there's 4 chunks there. Top left, develop the skills of our educators. Right, so you're here today. You're already, partially ticking that box. Empowering leaders. Okay, we'll come to that just in a short moment, but you're here on this call, so no doubt you're probably going to be the driving force for your setting as well. Enhanced curriculum and assessment. Not so much assessment, but certainly for measuring progress and observations, we will be using technology to help us do that. Improve access. Not a great deal we can do here. There's parts, but it might be, there might not be money certainly for pieces of technology, so it's about using, the getting the most out of what we've already got. But in terms of, children's access, we can certainly, improve that based on, what we've got already. So let's have a wee look at what exactly might this look like. Oh, just before we do that, what you might want to do, what a nice wee exercise for you could be to ask generative AI, whichever one you've got access to write you a 1-page policy. So I gave it a try and I asked it to write a 1-page policy for a Scottish ELC setting on digital technology. It was very vague. Then I asked it again, but this time I put on the end of it through play. And what it's done, all it's done really is it's picked up the framework from this award and it kind of just regurgitated this award. It would have taken me a long time to summarise that and put that into a policy. It did it for me. It might be different now. That was probably about a year ago that I tried this, but that might be an option for you as well. And then you just tweak it, to make it more personal to your setting. Right. So this very first aim, develop the skills and confidence of all practitioners, or our first objective, I should say. What sort of things do we need to consider to do that? Okay, so where are we all at? Who's more confident? Who's needing more support? And time, of course, time's the big one, isn't it? Especially if it's something that you want to upskill in yourself. So we might want to consider next year's working time agreement. You might want to consider, what your sort of self-directed CLPL is going to be. You might, as a team, decide that you're all going to work together, or you're going to break things up, but you'll all then support each other from what you've learned. And then what might that actually look like? I think I've just gave that one away, haven't I? Said that one, I jumped the gun on that one. Yes, so you might pair up and take turns, because it can be quite daunting, especially if you've got members of staff that really aren't confident with digital technology at all. So, if you're pairing up, you're breaking things down. So there might be a couple of you just going to look at that technology that can support communication. Okay, so the talking buttons and the talking apps. Maybe 2 or 3 if you're going to do that. And then another 2 or 3 you might look at the measure tools, the maths tools. Then another 2 or 3 you might look at the relaxation corner. Okay, and then you can swap, a few weeks at a time, and then you swap over, so that the children are getting the continuation, but all members of staff are gradually learning with the technology as well without becoming overwhelmed. One of the reports that I'll share with you at some point on this programme highlights, I think it was Ferry, Dean and Angus. I think it was Angus. I always say the wrong places, so it might not be Angus, but the nursery's called Ferry Dean. That's what they did. They broke things down into just wee bite-sized chunks that they would focus on, and then they would swap over. Okay, so when we're thinking about the curriculum, so we've already got our priorities on our setting improvement plan, so we're going to focus on those again. And what might we need to consider there? We might need to consider our children with additional learning needs or English as a second language, because we want all these experiences to be accessible for all our children. We might be thinking about our families too, because we want, to be able to encourage try at home and just really to bring, more of a community aspect into our setting, have our families all involved. We might be thinking about transition here. So if you remember early levels, that continuous curriculum into primary one. So where could transition, where could digital technology come in here to support transition? And then we're thinking as well about, children becoming confident in using technology as well and successful learners. So we might want to consider, what that would look like against the 4 capacities. So again, we might want to pair up, just like we said before. And what have we said here? Oh, yeah, so just delving in a wee bit deeper. We're now that we've got the hang of using this technology, we're having a deeper look to see, well, where is it working? What area can it complement? Where is children getting the most out of it? So once we've had that sort of general little exploration, little dabble with it, we're then really seeing what impact is it making? And if it's not making any impact, if it's not helping, stop. Like we said, it's not a one-size-fits-all approach, and sometimes what works really well in one centre might not work as well in your centre. And there's no harm, it's a lot of this is trial and error, isn't it? And every year it could change because the needs of your children change. Okay, so setting access to digital technology. So some things to consider, some things there's not much we can do about it. So in terms of the resources that we've got and our access, our connectivity, that just might be something that, we don't have any means to do anything with. However, cyber resilience and internet safety, yep, we can absolutely improve that to make sure that any access the children do have, they have it safely, particularly if we're thinking about internet-enabled technology. Again, we're thinking about our families, are they going to be part of this learning journey that we're going on? Are they going to be able to come in and have a try of the technology, or are they going to see it in the observations? Are they going to understand where the technology is being used? And then you might think about support for children and their families in cyber resilience and internet safety as well, because that is something that we do try and encourage so much at home. And you might already be doing a wee bit of benefit risk measures through the SMOA, the Care Inspectorate elephant sort of work. It's an elephant, isn't it? Purple elephant, I'm sure it is. And you can adopt that type of benefits risk approach to cyber resilience and internet safety. And if that's something that you feel is coming out as, a real area of low confidence, that's something that between Pam and I, we can help with that as well. And then that last objective, empower leaders of change. So you are the leaders of change here. So what do we need to consider? We regularly review our strategy, don't we? Sometimes things don't work, they don't go to plan, and we might change it. But what we want to do is give some recognition and some celebration here, for making these improvements, for working towards the Digital Skills Award. If it's something that you feel like you've really enjoyed and you want to support other settings, then you can then become a mentor setting too. But we'll not talk about that today because this is session 1. But sharing learning is something that's, we just don't do it enough for practitioners. We're great at doing it for the children and with the children. But when do we ever actually stop and say, Miss so-and-so, was on this CLPL course and she came back. When do we share that with the parents and the children? I think that's something that we're not very good at. Maybe it's a Scottish thing. I've heard people say that before, that we're not very good at singing our praises. Okay, so now I'm going to show you a couple of report highlights from some of the already awarded settings. This one's quite an old one. This one's from 2017. But these little highlights are screenshots I'm showing you. These are just from the section, the leadership section. Okay, the leadership and vision section. So we'll break it down like that each week or each session. Okay, so there's a few things being picked out there. Again, you'll see we're talking about distributing that, the workload. So, some members of the staff would focus on some elements, some would focus on others. In some settings, it's different. They might be, you've got your sort of leader for digital, you'll have a leader for literacy, a leader for numeracy, and they very much stay in their lane. And, that's their area for developing. But when it's split up a bit, I think it just makes it that it's a stronger impact, isn't it? Because then everyone knows, what's going on. And then if a member of staff does move or, goes off for any reason, things are still happening. This is a newer report. This was from last year. This is Coldside Nursery up in Dundee. And that's really highlighting there that, we don't know everything and we'll never know everything, but there's other people there that can help us, other organisations there that can help us, and we'll reach out, for support when we can. And then this one was 2002, so this was a sort of post-pandemic report. This was Glenbrae and Inverclyde. What's really clear in this one is, although they were awarded, and rightly so, it's highlighting there, that there was still areas for improvement and there was still things that they knew they had to work towards. So you might have, areas of strength, but there might be bits that you're working towards, and it's still okay to apply for the award because, it's everything's an ever, what's the word for it, evergreen, ongoing journey. We're always, the things change, policy changes all the time, doesn't it? We're always having to really, learn new things and work different ways. And then later on, this is the link for the introduction session recording. If you just fast forward it on to near the end, you'll see there's a man, Malcolm Wilson, comes on to talk about his role as a validator. And it's like the last 10 minutes at the end. And then this is the one, yes, I was right, Perth and Kinross. It's Linda McGavin from, I forgot the name of the setting, but Perth and Kinross, and she was awarded, or her setting was awarded just last year using the new framework. And she comes on and talks very honestly, but very positively about the experience of gathering evidence and then submitting the evidence, having the call, and how it's left them feeling afterwards. So that's it for this session tonight, because that was a lot to think about, and I don't want to overload you. It's a few weeks before session 2, and in session 2 there won't be as much of me talking. This is the hard one where we really need to, get our thoughts down on paper. So this is the one that I suppose had most talking from me in it. But the next few sessions we're going to look more at the validation evidence. So a lot of them have been uploaded on Sways, Microsoft Sways, so they're really visual, so I'll be able to share the screen, take you through them. Again, we'll look at some more reports and we'll have a look at examples of, what might our evidence be, and there'll be time for us to have, conversation, dialogue amongst one another, because, what you might think of as, digital technology in one area of the curriculum, somebody else might have a completely different idea for it, and it'd just be a really good way for you to share ideas back and forward. At the next session as well, I'll also share with you, we have a Microsoft Teams site, and it's on Glow, and it's for the Digital Schools Award, and we have a channel for ELC settings. So if you have Glow access, I will share the link with you next time, and you can join that, because what I do in there is I upload all the reports as they come in from Digital Schools Award. I upload them all into the files section of that channel. So, like we say, there's not the time, that we just don't have capacity for the visits like we used to, but we can spend some time, reading the reports from other settings. So on the screen there is my email address. If anybody has any questions in the meantime, feel free to get in touch. The team at the Digital Schools Award Scotland, Eva in particular, are so responsive. If you've got any questions about accessing the framework and things, they're really, really good at helping you out. And there's also a QR code, but the link's in the notes as well, to an evaluation. It'll ask you your local authority, what your position is, and then what session you've taken, what session you're reporting on, but I've already put the session in, so if you just scroll down, you'll see the name. I've put Renfrew on it and the date as well. So just a wee short one, and it's just to help me make improvements on these sessions so I can make them better. So thanks very much, everybody. I'm going to have a wee look at the notes now, the chat now, to see if there's any questions. But if anybody does want to just pop their camera and mic on, feel free to do that. If not, if you would rather just get away and take a deep breath and think about everything that I've shared with you tonight, then you are welcome to do that as well. You get 10 minutes off your life back.